Before I give the reading, I just want to say, Ami and the choir, you truly do raise us all up. In 1870, Unitarian Julia Ward Howe, author of the Battle Hymn of the Republic, wrote a proclamation to mothers all over the nation, long before Mother's Day became an officially recognized holiday. She wrote this Mother's Day proclamation. Arise, all women who have hearts, whether our baptism be that of water or tears. Say firmly, we will not have great questions decided by irrelevant agencies. Our husbands shall not come to us reeking with carnage for caresses and applause. Our sons shall not be taken from us to unlearn all that we've been able to teach them of charity, mercy, and patience. We, women of one country, will be too tender of those of another country to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs. From the bosom of the devastated earth, a voice goes up with our own. It says, disarm, disarm. The sword of murder is not the balance of justice. Blood does not wipe out dishonor, nor violence vindicate possession. As men have often forsaken the plow and the anvil at the summons of war, let women now leave all that may be left of home for a great and earnest day of council. Let them meet first as women to bewail and commemorate the dead. Let them then solemnly take counsel with each other as to the means whereby the great human family can live in peace, each bearing after his own kind the sacred impress not of Caesar, but of God. Now please rise and even though I was only 7 or 8 years old at the time, when my father would go away on trips, he would tell me that while he was away, he needed me to be the man of the house. To me, this meant I was old enough to be entrusted with being extra protective of my siblings and my mother. Of course, at that age, I had no idea what that would involve doing. All I knew was that my dad trusted me to be responsible, aware, loyal, and protective, and all of that felt really good. As I went through school, I experienced male socialization that was typical of that era. Baseball and football were prized most highly. I was not much good at either one, so I took a fair amount of teasing. However, thanks to wonderful people like my 6th grade gym teacher who patiently showed me how to bat baseball, I knew I had adults who were looking out for me. Fast forward to the 1990s, and I was a 40-something dad with a son of my own. I needed to understand better who I was and to accept myself more completely. So I participated in a number of retreats and conferences for men. I met a wide variety of men at these events, and I formed some deep friendships. We did ropes courses, taking on physical risks safely and supporting each other in overcoming fears of injury or vulnerability. We did trust falls too. The effect of these was not just to trust the men around you in the moment of the fall. It built a group-wide trust that made it easier to open up and be vulnerable around other men. In all that time, I never heard the term toxic masculinity. That only came later. As the 2000s rolled into the 2010s and became the 2020s, I eventually did start to hear it, though I'm not sure exactly where or when. There have been many news stories recently, think almost anything from the Me Too movement, featuring powerful men who abused their power, who abused their position over others, usually, but not exclusively, women. It is correct to call that behavior toxic. However, at times the lines have seemed to blur, and toxicity was being equated in some quarters with maleness, not a valid assumption. And too often it seemed to me those associations had a political agenda of one kind or another behind them. Recently, Scott Galloway, an NYU professor and serial entrepreneur, said while appearing on television on The View, "There is no such thing as toxic masculinity. There is cruelty, there is criminal behavior, there's abuse of power. But if you do any of those things, you're not masculine. That is anti-masculine. And the far right, just to be political, conflating masculinity with coarseness and cruelty, that could not be less masculine." Now we are in a unique time and place in the history of America and the world. A man who is a known abuser of power has been reelected to the presidency of the United States, and he is working to impose a dictatorship on our nation and chaos on the world. And as people of conscience, we are called upon to take the stand of our lifetimes. In the 2020 election, much was made of the role of alienated young men. The assertions about their effect on the election may prove true or false. Regardless, the current regime is politically in bed with elements of the extreme right wing in our country, whose ideology preach social and racial exclusion and a false supremacy. It is not an exaggeration to say that they have proved determined to dominate the legal, social, and political life of our country. And one of their angles of attack is to try to redefine masculinity along lines that conveniently line up with authoritarian rule. Be white, be straight, dominate your woman, and most concerningly of all, the idea that only those of a particular set of religious beliefs are fit to rule our land. This national emergency calls on all of us to swallow our desire for ideological purity and reach out to form alliances with people who may not believe exactly as we do. In this moment, we need to find others who are also ready to put aside differences and pitch in, working together to save the nation. Bringing this back to boys and young men, all of this affects our young people, including our young men. Young people in general are the ones most exposed to social media with all of its evils. Boys and young men may lack the life experience to temper the dangerous and misinformed claims about what it is to be a real man. Our job is to be there for them, not with our words alone, but also with our actions. As an example, boys may need to forego the lure of the smartphone screen at times. If we want them to do this, we must be willing to do it ourselves. So here's a simple example. In the Wednesday afternoon Dungeons and Dragons series that Andrew White has been running for our middle schoolers, one of the agreed rules is no screens during D&D. The kids go along with this, and they see the adults do it too. So yes, we should attend those mass demonstrations or volunteer and build that Habitat for Humanity house with our neighbors, or write letters and make phone calls to our legislators, get around to rejoining that fraternal lodge or maybe a bowling league. Whatever we each choose for social engagement and community, it will be enough. And if we have boys in our lives, we need to make the effort to bring them along too. They may be interested or they may be bored. They may cooperate or just act like pains in the neck. Either way, they will see and remember what we do. Those memories will be our real legacy to them. When we are long gone from the scene, that's what they will remember, what we did and the help we gave them.
A few weeks ago on my way home, somebody tore past me on Route 1 in a big black truck with a bumper sticker on the back that read, "Make money, not friends." It was the first time I saw a bumper sticker like that, but weirdly not the last. I think I've seen a half dozen of them in the last few weeks. It's part of a national trend that David Brooks has been noticing for years. In 2021, he wrote about the self-isolation of men, calling it a piece of what seems to be the psychological unraveling of America. And he cited some statistics according to the survey on American life. Two of them were particularly interesting. Major depression rates among youths aged 12 to 27 rose by almost 63% between 2013 and 2016. And American suicide rates increased by 33% between 1999 and 2019. And Americans, as I'm sure you know, all seem to report sometimes or always feeling that no one knows them well. In fact, earlier this year, that survey from the Center on American Life revealed that 15% of men, 15% say they don't have even one close friend. That's a 500% increase since 1999. Brooks went on to write, I confess, I don't understand what's causing this, but social pain and vulnerability are affecting everything. Our families, schools, politics, even sports. Anxiety, depression, and anger are hard to deal with within the tangled intimacy of family life. But political tribalism becomes a mechanism with which people can shore themselves up, vanquish shame, fight for righteousness, and find a sense of belonging. People who feel betrayed will lash out at someone if there is no one there to help them process their underlying hurt. As the Franciscan friar Richard Rohr wisely wrote, if we do not transform our pain, we will most assuredly transmit it. A couple of years ago, my husband Joe and I joined a Masonic lodge. I never in a million years would have thought I did it, would have done something like that. But our reasons were many and varied. But suffice to say, we joined because we wanted to be part of a values-based social organization. Something like a congregation, but like a congregation where we could actually be friends with other members. So we joined a lodge of guys like us. It's in Cambridge, Mass. And they're a bunch of liberal, well-educated, open-minded guys. Most of them work for universities, and most of them are gay. In fact, we had dinner last night with another gay couple from our lodge. Now, before we arrived, the leaders of the lodge were afraid that they were on the edge of an abyss. Membership was dwindling, people were dying, new people weren't joining. We were the first new members they had initiated in 6 years. And then something unexpected happened. Since we joined, 20 more men have joined, ranging in age from 19 to 75. There used to be 15 guys at lodge nights. Now there's closer to 50, 50. Even the long-term members are showing up more often because there's more energy. Now, as reliable, welcome, charming, and universally loved and very humble people like Joe and I are, we would love to take credit for the growth, but really, it has nothing to do with us. We just happen to be at the very beginning of a trend. I've talked to every one of those new men who have joined us, and every single one of them had told me some variation on the same thing. I joined because I don't want to be isolated. I want to be surrounded by men who want to be better men and better citizens, and I want you to help me be better too. I think together we can be a counterbalance to the extremism that we're living in. One brother who was raised by 2 moms and no dad told me in October how hard it is for him to hear from people that he loves, that masculinity, especially straight white masculinity, is toxic. While the would-be dictator running for president would look into the camera at men like him and say, I love you. I appreciate you. And that just made him feel more alone because he knew he wasn't one of the guys that was loved in that way. I guarantee you, every one of my Freemason brothers wants to smash the patriarchy because it hurts their daughters, their wives, their sisters, their mothers, and it hurts themselves. And isn't that what Julia Ward Howe was asking for when she made her proclamation to mothers in 1870? She called on all women to do what they could with the tools they had to seize their own power and make their husbands and sons end aggression and war. I have to admit, though, I've come to find that a little bit cringy. I mean, her tactic may have worked in 1870, but now it feels a little bit passive aggressive, like withholding affection. It kind of feels a little like emotional blackmail. See, the thing is, I was raised by a feminist. You know, I was born 100 years after that proclamation and raised by this feminist who lives way far outside of the expectations of femininity. She would never in a million years call herself a feminist, but she is undoubtedly a feminist. She operates under the basic belief that women are people, and she taught my brothers and me to treat women and all people with the respect they deserve equally. And that understanding of feminism was the best gift she ever gave us. And she did it without ever having to manipulate us or withhold anything. And the thing is, we are surrounded by feminist guys like me. And you know who they are. A few weeks ago, I stood up here and I asked cis-het men in the congregation to show up for our Beyond the Binary conference, in which we made safe space for people who live so far from the patriarchy that they can't identify with only one end of a gender spectrum. We needed the dudes, I said, to be calm, unthreatened, and non-threatening presence that sent a message that this is all cool. And a bunch showed up and they said to me, I'm here to be a dude. And a few of them told me really touching stories of what they learned, acknowledging that the problem is not that gender expansive people exist. The problem is the often violent expectation that everyone must fit into some impossible extreme. That's the toxicity. And a couple of our dudes were really vulnerable with me in their reflections afterward. They showed me that this congregation is full of sweet, kind, gentle, strong, good men who want to have better, closer relationships with other men, relationships of accountability and mutual support, like my lodge brothers. Now, let's be clear. I am not saying on Mother's Day of all day that men are the heroes of feminism. We're not, far from it. But a lot of men are showing up to do better and really can help make the world kinder, safer, gentler, more compassionate, more equitable. And I'm not saying that anyone should prop up patriarchy. I think we all know that the patriarchy hurts everyone, including the men that it seems to be benefiting, which I think is proved by the fact that some of them actually believe that making money is more important than making friends. What I am asking you to do, if you identify as a mother or as a woman, or really if you identify as anything other than cisgender and heterosexual and male, is to give some credit to the good dudes that you don't have to manipulate into doing the right thing. We've come a long way, a long, long way since Julia Ward Howe made that first proclamation. If you and your family are celebrating your mother today, please enjoy the love and the fanfare and the accolades. Enjoy the flowers and the candy and the special dinner. Save the cards forever. And notice when those sons and husbands are doing the work of making peace and being present in meaningful ways. Notice that they're doing it in large part because of you. Make space for them and the real gifts they bring, the gifts that can't be bought. Support them as they try their best to support other men to be the kind of gentle men who dismantle the patriarchy. for your sake and for theirs. Helping us be better people of any gender may just help save the world from aggression. Please rise now in body or in spirit and open your teal hymnals